Welcome by the fifth podcast about MBT group session. Have you ever found yourself staring at a wall at like 2 in the morning?
Oh, definitely. Just completely wide awake for no logical reason.
Right. Like you're exhausted to your absolute bones, right? But you frantically feel this urge to, I don't know, reorganize a shoebox or scrub a floorboard.
Yeah, or like suddenly deciding you need to go outside in the dark and fix some minor plumbing issue you've ignored for months.
Exactly. You are completely depleted, but you're being driven by this invisible electric anxiety that just demands you keep moving.
It's awful. And it's a state of mind that is so profoundly misunderstood,
Yeah.
often even by the person who's actually experiencing it.
Yeah, because we usually label it as like being productive,
Sure.
right? Or we say we just have nervous energy.
Exactly. But what we are really looking at in those moments is a nervous system on the absolute brink of collapse. It's a system desperately trying to outrun its own emotional reality.
And since this is our fifth time exploring this framework, we aren't here to just label symptoms. We're here to really look at the invisible architecture of human connection.
Right, the real underlying mechanics of it all.
Yeah. And just to remind you, because we are doing a deep dive into mentalization-based treatment, or MBT, this isn't just about talking. It's an active, live interaction.
It really is. It's about understanding your own thoughts and feelings and then trying to understand the inner world of others.
Exploring what happens between people, right? Staying curious instead of just reacting automatically. And today, our source text is super unique.
It's fascinating because we aren't analyzing a transcript of a full group session this time
Right.
with all those overlapping voices.
Right. Instead, we are stepping into a one-on-one session. And this session serves as this vital, really fragile bridge between two highly intense group meetings.
Yeah, so to set the scene, this one-on-one is taking place on a Thursday. And this one participant, he survived a deeply heavy, really traumatic group session on Tuesday. And now he is staring down the barrel of another group session on Friday morning.
Wow. So we are actually looking at the emotional hangover of the group process.
Exactly. We are tracking what happens when the raw, totally unfiltered emotional dysregulation of a therapy group just spills out of the clinic and bleeds into someone's daily reality.
I love that we're doing this. We're going to track that bleed. We're going to see how the weight of Tuesday alters, his interactions with his neighbors, his contractors, his wife.
It touches literally everything in his week.
It does. We'll examine how his internal alarms start firing at completely benign interactions and how the therapist has to carefully, meticulously reel him back into a state where he can observe his own mind again.
Rather than just being a victim to those impulses, yeah.
Right. So let's look at how he enters the room on Thursday. The transcript notes that the therapist opens with a really simple observation of his physical presence.
Yeah, she just asks, "How are you sitting there?"
And he just says, a bit tired.
Which is, the understatement of the century, right? If we look at the physiological data he immediately provides, he isn't just a bit tired.
Not at all.
His biological baseline is entirely fractured. He details this massive sleep debt. He went to bed extremely late, and which is highly uncharacteristically for him, he snoozed his alarm twice.
Right, and he also describes the sheer physical grind of his commute between two major cities during rush hour traffic.
Exactly. So before they even speak about psychology, we really have to look at his biology here. His sympathetic nervous system is already redlining just from the basic logistics of his day.
And what's so great is that the therapist doesn't bypass this. Like, she doesn't immediately pivot to, tell me about your childhood trauma.
No, she anchors right there in his physical exhaustion.
She notes that their sessions are packed really closely together this week. And then she asks a very specific framing question. She says, what do you want to get out of today?
And the way he answers that is so critical. He demands a direct question. He says he wants to be challenged.
But beneath that request for a challenge, there's a confession. Right?
Yeah, a huge one. He admits that Tuesday's group session had this massive destabilizing impact on him.
Because in that Tuesday group, he had to sit there and listen to the profound, visceral, physical traumas of the other group members.
Right. And he uses this phrase that just stopped me in my tracks.
What was it?
He says hearing their stories awakened things inside him that he thought were safely tucked away.
Oh, wow. Yeah. The group acted as this unavoidable mirror for him.
Exactly. He couldn't just intellectually sympathize with the other members. Their physical trauma bypassed all his cognitive defenses and resonated directly in his own body.
He realized that the traumatic experiences of the others were sticking with him even more vividly than his own buried memories.
And that right there is the double-edged sword of the group dynamic in MBT. We talk about somatic resonance. The way our mirror neurons literally simulate the pain we see in others so we can understand it.
Right, we feel what they feel.
Yes. But when you are in a group of people unpacking severe trauma, your nervous system doesn't always know the difference between their history and your history.
It just registers danger.
Exactly. So for this participant, sitting in that room on Tuesday required a monumental expenditure of psychological energy just to keep his own buried trauma from erupting.
Which perfectly sets up the mechanical reality of his entire week. Like, we need to talk about his window of tolerance here.
Oh, absolutely. It's the key to everything that happens next.
Because everything that happens to him, every argument, every frustration, stems from the fact that Tuesday's group fundamentally altered the size of that window.
Right. Let's look at the mechanics of that for a second. Yeah. The window of tolerance is basically the optimal zone of arousal, right?
Okay, break that down for us.
So it's where your prefrontal cortex, which
Ah.
is the part of your brain responsible for logic, empathy, and mentalizing, is online and communicating effectively with your amygdala, which is your threat detection center.
So they're talking to each other nicely.
Exactly. When you are inside that window, you have flexibility. Say a contractor makes a mistake, you can just pause, assess the situation, and communicate a boundary clearly.
But because Tuesday's group demanded so much energy to process, his window has shrunk to, like, the size of a pinhole.
It's practically non-existent.
Let me try an analogy here to see if this captures the mechanism. Think about your smartphone battery, right?
Okay, I'm with you.
When you are at 100%, you can run maps, stream music, record a video, and the operating system handles it all super smoothly. That's a wide window of tolerance.
Lots of capacity.
But when your phone is at like 2% battery, just receiving a single text message or opening a background app can cause the entire system to instantly crash to a black screen.
Yeah.
Is that what's happening to him? Like, the background processing of the group trauma has drained him to 2%, so everyday life just crashes his system.
It's close.
Yeah.
But I actually want to challenge that analogy slightly because I think it misses the active, really chaotic nature of human biology.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, a phone at 2% just quietly turns off.
Right.
It powers down peacefully. But a human nervous system outside its window of tolerance doesn't shut down quietly. It actively hijacks your brain.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When you drop out of that window, you don't just lose power. Your autonomic nervous system violently shifts you into either hyperarousal, which is that frantic fight-or-flight energy looking for threats absolutely everywhere, or hypoarousal.
And hyperarousal is what? Like freezing?
Exactly. It's a rigid dissociative freeze response. So he isn't just a drained battery. He is a hypervigilant threat detection machine operating entirely on fumes.
That distinction completely changes how we view his behavior because he actually recognizes this in the session.
He does, yeah.
He literally tells the therapist that he is operating out of his window. Like, he
Yeah.
uses the term. He notices that his energy expenditure is entirely out of proportion to the events around him.
He's getting irritated at lightning speed.
Yeah.
And he admits he is acting less nice than he usually does. He knows his system is hijacked.
And just look at how the therapist handles this hijacked system. It's so masterful.
It really is. Because when a participant is hovering right on the edge of hyperarousal, their speech often speeds way up. They want to rush through a checklist of external complaints to avoid sitting with the internal dysregulation.
Just trying to outrun it with words.
Exactly. So the therapist's primary intervention here is purely mechanical. She slows the pacing, she lowers her tone.
She doesn't ask him to immediately unpack the trauma he tucked away.
No, because that would blow his window wide open and cause a total panic response. Instead, she validates the physical reality of his fatigue. She is actively loaning him her own regulated nervous system to help him stabilize.
Wow. So she is essentially providing the shock absorbers that he currently lacks.
That's a great way to put it.
And he really needs them. Because as the transcript shifts to his life outside the therapy room, we see exactly what happens when a hypervigilant threat detection machine tries to interact with normal, everyday neighbors.
Oh man, the patio incident.
Let's talk about the patio incident. It's wild.
This is a textbook example of hypoarousal, that freeze response I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
To really understand the stakes, we have to look at the environment.
Set the scene for us.
So the participant is engaged in this massive garden renovation at his home. And at the exact same time, his neighbors, a husband and wife, are building a large patio covering right next to his property line.
Sounds like a recipe for stress already.
Right. So it's late at night, the carpenters have gone home, the neighbors are sitting in their garden drinking wine, and the participant and his wife wander over for a casual chat.
It seems entirely benign.
Totally benign. The neighbor's wife asks a logistical question. She says, hey, is the noise going to bother your family since our patios are so close?
And the participant starts doing what he does best, right? Giving this deeply technical explanation about the acoustic insulation they are using.
Yes. But then the neighbor's wife pivots.
What does she do?
She makes a joke. And not just a lighthearted joke. It's a passive-aggressive, highly specific joke about the kind of noise the participant's wife makes. Yeah, it's a verbal jab delivered with a smile aimed directly at his partner.
And if he were inside his window of tolerance, he might have just laughed it off or gently deflected it or even casually set a boundary. But how does he react?
He completely freezes.
He goes completely silent, right?
It's total silence.
Hmm.
He tells the therapist later that behind every little joke, there is a signal. His threat detection system caught the hostility instantly, but his vocal cords just wouldn't work.
It's like he's short-circuited.
He experienced a dorsal vagal shutdown in that millisecond. He recognizes the interpersonal threat, but because he has zero emotional reserves left from the group session, his brain determines that engaging in conflict is simply too dangerous.
So it shuts his outward expression down completely.
He literally swallows the reaction to protect the environment.
And he admits this to the therapist. He says he couldn't find the right words to, quote, keep it nice.
Right.
He was hyper-aware that if he opened his mouth, his raw, unedited anger would bleed through his intonation.
He wasn't just protecting himself. He was terrified of his own potential for dysregulation.
But the cost of that silence is massive. I mean, the anger doesn't disappear just because you don't speak it. It marinates.
It marinates and it builds. Which is why the therapist asks a really brilliant probing question here. She doesn't validate his silence, and she doesn't condemn the neighbor.
What does she ask?
She asks him, is it a bad thing that you hold it in?
Wow, that's the core of mentalization-based treatment right there. She is forcing him to step outside his own automated defense mechanism and evaluate its utility.
And you can feel him wrestling with this question in the transcript. He doesn't have a clean answer.
No, he says, I don't know if it's bad. They are friends. They are neighbors. You have to keep the peace.
And he brings up another incident in the exact same breath. This time with his head contractor.
Oh, right, the Saturday schedule thing.
Yeah, they had a firm agreement for his Saturday work schedule. But the contractor abruptly changed the plan, and instead of calling the participant, he bypassed him entirely and told the participant's wife.
Which, to a man who is already feeling deeply vulnerable and protective of his boundaries, that feels like an explicit act of disrespect.
Absolutely. It's a circumvention of his authority in his own home.
But again, he says nothing to the contractor. He just absorbs the hit.
He is acting like an emotional sponge.
Yeah.
Just soaking up all the ambient disrespect and irritation in his environment so that the external world remains calm.
But internally, he is just drowning.
Drowning. And this pattern of silent absorption leads us to a moment in the transcript that is just startlingly literal.
Yeah.
It is the perfect physical manifestation of his psychological state.
The car dent.
The car dent.
This scene is agonizing to read because you can just see it coming in slow motion.
It's painful.
So he is at work. He is in the middle of a massive professional transition, right?
Right.
Moving away from a client where he had built deep structural connections.
Right.
He had a goodbye meeting that actually went surprisingly well. He felt validated, but the ambient stress of the transition is still humming in his background.
Very much so.
He gets to his car in the parking lot. He is fundamentally distracted. And he leaves his rear left car door wide open.
Yeah.
He gets in, puts the car in reverse, and backs that open door directly into a heavy, immovable gate pole.
If we were looking at a piece of literature, we would call this heavy-handed symbolism.
Truly.
But this is real life. The open car door is the perfect physical representation of his porous boundaries. He's moving backward, distracted by the past and the stress of the present, unable to protect his own perimeter, and he just crashes into the rigid reality of the world.
And the physical damage to the hinge of the door is brutal. But it's his commentary on the damage that really exposes his internal world.
Yeah, what does he say?
He tells the therapist, some people say the first dent is the worst, but for me, every dent is the worst.
Man, that phrase is the Rosetta Stone for his entire week.
It really is.
He isn't talking about the sheet metal of his car. He is talking about the emotional hits he's been taking since Tuesday, the heavy trauma of the group, the neighbor's passive-aggressive joke, the contractor bypassing him.
Every single one of these is a dent.
And because his shock absorbers are completely gone, every minor scratch feels like a totalizing catastrophe.
He doesn't have the capacity to say, well, that was annoying, but I'll move on.
No, every dent reinforces this core narrative that the world is chaotic, that people are careless, and that he is fundamentally unprotected.
And the therapist zeroes in on this accumulation, right? She points out the mechanical reality of what he is doing. He is stacking these irritations inside his own body.
Because when you absorb the shock of the world without expressing it, that energy has to go somewhere. It turns inward. It becomes hypervigilance.
And this inward turn completely dominates how he handles the ongoing garden renovation at his house. Let's transition to the garden, because this is where his hypervigilance mutates into a desperate need for control.
We really need to understand his background here to get this part.
Yeah.
He isn't just a homeowner writing checks.
Right. He has a highly technical background.
Exactly. He understands the mechanics of construction, the nuances of electrical wiring, the physics of plumbing. He has hired an entire crew of professionals to do this massive renovation, but instead of relaxing, he is in absolute excruciating agony watching them work.
Because his technical knowledge is basically acting as a curse.
It really is. He describes a phenomenon to the therapist that is intensely relatable for anyone prone to anxiety.
Oh, I felt this one in my bones.
Right. He says that if a construction process requires 5 steps, his brain automatically visualizes step 5. He looks out his window, he sees the workers executing step 2, and he instantly identifies that a slight miscalculation in step 2 is going to cause a catastrophic failure when they reach step 5.
So what does he do? He goes outside, he approaches the lead contractor, and he says, listen, the way you are laying this groundwork is going to be a problem.
He offers his foresight.
And how does the contractor respond? He brushes him off. He says, don't worry about it. You won't see anything. It's going to be completely fine. You're making a fuss.
And this is where the trauma of the interaction really crystallizes. Because the very next day, what happens?
The exact catastrophic failure the participant predicted comes to pass. The exact thing he warned them about fails.
It fails.
He comes home from work, surveys the damage, and has to make the excruciating phone call to the contractor to say, the exact thing I told you was going to happen just happened.
It's maddening.
Okay, but I have to pause here and push back on this a little bit.
Okay.
Because as I was reading the transcript, part of me was thinking, is this guy just an insufferable micromanager?
I know it looks like that.
I mean, he hired professional paving guys and landscapers. Isn't the whole point of hiring professionals that you step back and let them do their job?
It's true.
He even admits to the therapist that he is a perfectionist. Like, that after the workers leave for the day, he gets out a long spirit level and goes around checking the angle of the paving stones they just laid. Isn't he weaponizing his own perfectionism and bringing this stress onto himself?
I see exactly where you are going with that, and it's a very common way to view this kind of behavior from the outside. But we have to look deeper into the psychology of epistemic trust here.
Epistemic trust.
Okay. This isn't just about whether a paving stone is tilted 2 degrees to the left. Epistemic trust is our ability to believe that the information we receive from others is reliable and safe.
Okay, so trusting that people know what they're talking about.
Right. When you have a history of trauma, or when you were severely dysregulated by a group therapy process like he is, your epistemic trust shatters. You fundamentally stop believing that other people know what they are doing, or that they have your best interests at heart.
Oh, wow. So you're saying the spirit level isn't about the stones.
Not at all.
The spirit level is him trying to measure whether the world is safe.
Exactly. And look at the specific nature of the wound here. The deepest injury isn't the broken stone. It's the fact that he saw the danger, he vocalized the danger, and he was explicitly told that his reality was invalid.
He was told he was crazy for worrying.
Yes. Imagine the psychological whiplash of knowing a train is going to crash, warning the conductor, being mocked by the conductor, and then watching the train derail.
The frustration isn't just the crash. The frustration is the absolute erasure of your expertise and your voice.
He feels profoundly unseen. And for a man who is already drained from a therapy group where feeling seen is the entire objective, experiencing that kind of dismissal in his own backyard is triggering an avalanche of old wounds.
That reframes it entirely. It's not micromanagement. It's a desperate plea for reality to be acknowledged.
Exactly.
He gives another devastatingly specific example with a young apprentice working in the yard. This kid is tasked with just hauling heavy paving stones from a pile in the front yard to the workspace in the back.
Yeah, and the participant is watching from the window.
Right, and he instantly realizes that these specific stones have a top and a bottom, like a subtle bevel on the edge.
And his brain maps the efficiency matrix instantly. He knows that if the kid pays attention and stacks the stones right side up, The master paving guy can just grab them and work twice as fast later.
But if the kid stacks them upside down, the master paving guy is going to have to flip every single heavy stone by hand, breaking his rhythm and exhausting his back.
The participant sees this inefficiency playing out in real time, and it is driving his nervous system insane.
He tells the therapist about his internal debate. He says, if you can make it easier for someone, why keep it to yourself?
But he is paralyzed.
Yeah, if he goes outside and corrects the teenager, he risks being the annoying, hovering homeowner. But if he stays inside, he has to watch an entirely preventable struggle unfold. He is hyper-aware to everything, and it is just exhausting him.
He even says the words, "I can better stay away." He knows his hypervigilance is a problem, but he physically cannot disconnect.
The anxiety of what will go wrong if he isn't watching overrides his need for peace.
Yeah.
And this tension reaches an absolute boiling point with the incident of the severed cable.
Oh, the severed cable.
This part is so frustrating. The participant had personally laid an expensive, heavy-duty underground electrical cable in the garden. He explicitly gathered the crew and warned them.
He said, "Watch out for this specific cable. It is very expensive."
If you hit it with an excavator or a shovel, the replacement cost is going on your bill. He set a clear, unambiguous boundary.
And the very next day, what happens? The cable is cut. It is severed straight through.
But the damage to the wire is secondary to the psychological damage of the cover-up. Because when the participant discovers it, the crew tries to play dumb.
They suggest that maybe someone else came into the yard over the weekend and sabotaged it.
Which is ridiculous. And the participant knows the older paving guy did it with his shovel. This is where we see his core values violated.
Yeah.
He tells the therapist, I make mistakes every day, fortunately, otherwise I couldn't learn. He isn't demanding perfection from them.
Not at all.
He wouldn't even be enraged if the guy just walked up and said, hey man, I'm sorry, my shovel slipped, I hit the cable. What causes the psychological short circuit is the evasion of responsibility. The contractor is looking him in the eye and lying to avoid accountability.
In the MBT framework, taking responsibility for your actions and their impact on others is a cornerstone of mentalizing.
Okay, that makes sense.
When the contractor dodges accountability, it violently confirms the participant's core fear that people are inherently unreliable, dishonest, and fundamentally careless with his boundaries.
So how does the therapist intervene here? Because she obviously isn't going to give him advice on how to manage construction crews.
Notice her restraint in the transcript. She doesn't dive into the drama of the cut wire. She focuses entirely on his internal metabolic processing of the event.
So she stays with his feelings.
Right. She validates his technical expertise. She acknowledges that he was right about the stones and the wire. But then she shifts the spotlight. She asks, where does that stay? How do you let this go?
She points out that when the external environment becomes chaotic and dismissive, his learned survival mechanism is to retreat into a state of isolated, simmering irritation.
Exactly. He doesn't explode at the workers. He withdraws.
He pulls back, and this brings us to the most poignant tragedy of the entire week, I think. Because when the outside world, the group, the neighbors, the contractors, feels chaotic, dismissive, and dangerous, where is he supposed to retreat?
He retreats to his primary relationship.
He goes to his safe harbor, he goes to his wife. But because the emotional hangover of the group has distorted his entire reality, he finds a devastating misattunement waiting for him right in his own backyard.
Yeah, it centers around a conflict that, to anyone outside the relationship, sounds almost comically trivial.
The conflict of the irrigation sprinkler.
Yes, the sprinkler. But in the context of his psychological state, this sprinkler carries the emotional weight of a loaded weapon.
Let's break down the scene. The participant, utilizing his deep technical competence, has spent significant time building a highly efficient drip irrigation system for the new garden.
It is a precise, engineered system designed to release water slowly, deeply saturating the roots over a long period.
It isn't flashy, but it is highly effective. But his wife looks at the system. She sees that it is only dripping.
And in her mind, watering a garden means seeing a massive, sweeping arc of water raining down on the plants.
Right. She assumes his system is inadequate. So, without consulting him, she bypasses his carefully constructed engineering, drags out a standard old-fashioned lawn sprinkler, hooks it up, and turns it on high.
If we just look at the behavior, it's a minor disagreement about gardening. But if we put on our MBT goggles and look at the inner world of the participant, this is a catastrophic emotional event.
Think about the week he has had.
Exactly. He has felt dismissed by his neighbors, ignored and lied to by his contractors, and emotionally drained by his therapy group. He built this drip system as a tangible
It
contribution.
was his way of saying, look, I am competent. I can provide for this home.
And when she bypasses the system, it strikes at the absolute core of his vulnerability. He actually voices this explicitly to the therapist.
What does he say?
He says the conflict is fundamentally about the question, do you see me and what I do, and can you trust me? When his wife grabs that sprinkler, he doesn't feel like his plants are getting overwatered. He feels completely, totally invalidated as a competent partner.
He tells the therapist that he consciously chooses to let it go. He tells himself, let her sprinkle. But he immediately admits that the physical tension in his chest doesn't dissipate.
Because letting it go in that moment isn't an act of forgiveness. It's an act of profound exhaustion.
His tension is running so high, his window of tolerance is so narrow, that he knows if he opens his mouth to argue about the sprinkler, he will just explode.
He realizes that if he fights, he won't be arguing about water pressure. He will be fighting a desperate battle to be seen and respected.
And he knows from experience that when you fight for validation from a place of desperation, you usually just look stubborn or controlling or arrogant to the other person.
So he chooses the only defense mechanism he has left, which is withdrawal.
Which sets the stage for a behavioral loop that plays out later that exact same evening. And this is where we see attachment theory in raw, painful action.
Yeah, this part is tough.
The participant is completely overwhelmed. The cumulative stress has given him a severe headache. He tells his wife that he simply cannot handle any more input. He says he needs to go out to his mini farm, which seems to be a small piece of land or a shed he uses as a retreat, and just be completely alone.
He sets a clear boundary.
He explicitly asks her to leave him alone so he can regulate his nervous system.
He is attempting to auto-regulate because co-regulation with her feels too dangerous right now. So he walks out the door, goes to his sanctuary, and breathes out. And then, 5 minutes later, his cell phone rings.
It's his wife.
He is instantly plunged into an agonizing dilemma.
Does he answer the phone, thereby breaking his own explicitly stated boundary and inviting more stimulation into his overloaded system? Or does he ignore it?
He chooses the boundary. He lets the phone ring, who ignores the call.
But ignoring the call does not bring him peace.
It does the exact opposite. The moment he ignores that call, his nervous system floods with guilt, anxiety, and catastrophic thinking.
He spends the next hour in his sanctuary wondering why she called. Was it an emergency? Is she furious that he didn't answer?
Is he failing as a husband by not being available? The physical act of enforcing his boundary generates so much internal tension that it entirely defeats the purpose of the rest.
I love how the therapist leans into this moment. She doesn't let him gloss over it. She asks him a very direct, piercing question. She says, are you taking yourself seriously?
He tries to say yes, arguing that by ignoring the call, he was prioritizing his rest. But the therapist points out the reality. He allowed his mind to be entirely hijacked by his anxiety about her feelings.
He wasn't resting. He was obsessing over her reaction to his absence.
This is the pursuer-distancer dynamic, a classic attachment loop, playing out in real time. The participant, feeling overwhelmed, unseen, and dysregulated, withdraws to self-soothe.
He needs physical and emotional distance to lower his heart rate.
His wife, who might be sensing his emotional withdrawal, or perhaps just needs connection herself, pursues him by reaching out via the phone.
And her pursuit, the phone call, triggers his deep-seated fear of being engulfed and his guilt over needing space.
While his withdrawal, ignoring the call, triggers her potential fear of rejection, they are locked in a dance where both people's attempts to feel safe actively threaten the other person.
Both end up feeling entirely misunderstood and deeply disconnected.
It is utterly heartbreaking. They're both trying to survive the evening, but their survival strategies are fundamentally incompatible in that moment.
And this accumulation of disconnection from the group, the neighbors, the contractors, and now his wife brings us to the absolute climax of this therapy session.
We've seen what happens when he interacts with the world. Now we're going to look at what happens when the world goes to sleep, and he is finally entirely alone.
We are entering the territory of hyperarousal masking as productivity. The participant decides that he is finally going to execute his plan to, quote, just relax.
I want you to picture this scene, because the physical details are what make it so intensely relatable.
Right. It's late at night, the house is quiet. He decides his method of unstimulating his brain will be watching a Netflix series on the couch.
He even rationalizes this to his wife, telling her, Netflix is not a stimulus, it's a stimulus I choose.
He sits down, he presses play, but his body refuses to comply. Over the course of a few episodes, he literally cannot stay seated. He pauses the show 4 separate times to get up and do physical labor.
He is incapable of stillness. He sees dishes in the sink, so he gets up to wash them. Then, the anxiety escalates to bizarre heights. He remembers a copper plumbing pipe outside that needs rerouting for the garden renovation.
Yes, it is the middle of the night. He is exhausted. But he pauses Netflix, walks outside into the dark, goes to the front of the house to shut off the main water valve, runs to the backyard, takes a pipe cutter to a live copper pipe, installs a new fitting, and then runs back to the front to turn the water back on.
He tells the therapist he spent the next 10 minutes terrified he had just flooded his own shed, running back and forth to check for leaks.
He mentions that he was actually super proud of himself because he had never successfully worked with copper pipes before. But in the exact same breath, he admits, I was dead tired, I shouldn't have even started it.
And the plumbing isn't the end of it. He goes back inside, he does a load of laundry, he finds a random shoebox and decides it needs to be reorganized.
A shoebox.
Yeah. He describes his mental state to the therapist as feeling almost ADHD-like. It is a chaotic, fragmented, high-demand state where he loses all logical overview of his evening, but feels this intense, burning compulsion to act.
He says about the shoebox, I must move this shoebox differently. I could do it in 15 minutes, but no, I have to do it now because then I get a better feeling.
Let's put this under the microscope. Let's look at the actual voice in his head driving this manic behavior. He confesses to the therapist that it feels like there is an internal voice screaming at him.
What's it saying?
If you don't do this, prove yourself.
Wow. That phrase, prove yourself, is the key to unlocking the entire week. This is the voice of high-functioning anxiety and perfectionism weaponized against the self.
Think about the narrative he has absorbed since Tuesday.
The group trauma made him feel small and vulnerable.
The neighbor's joke made him feel mocked.
The contractors made him feel dismissed and invisible.
His wife bypassing the sprinkler made him feel incompetent.
His internal system is completely starved for validation. He feels entirely unseen by the external world. So what does he do?
He creates artificial, undeniable physical tasks, like cutting a copper pipe or organizing a shoebox to prove his own value and competence to himself.
If no one else will acknowledge his effort, he will force his own brain to acknowledge it by engaging in frantic, undeniable physical labor.
It's the illusion of rest.
Let me use an analogy here. It's like putting a car in neutral and slamming your foot on the gas pedal.
Oh, I like that.
To an outside observer, like his wife going to sleep, he is just having a quiet night at home. He's on the couch, he's doing a few chores. It looks like the car is standing still.
But under the hood, the engine is redlining.
The internal machinery, the grief of being unseen, the desperate need for control, the hum of the group trauma is spinning so fast, it's tearing the engine apart.
That is precisely what is happening. He believes he is relaxing because his geographical location is his living room. But psychologically, he is sprinting on a treadmill of self-worth.
And this is where the therapist executes an absolute masterstroke of mentalization-based treatment. She doesn't criticize him for doing the dishes.
She doesn't tell him he needs better time management.
No, she entirely reframes the function of his behavior. She points out that he isn't relaxing, and he isn't just being helpful around the house. By constantly moving, by constantly searching for the next small task to fixate on, he is actively, physically outrunning his own underlying grief.
She looks at him and says, it has meaning that you start running so fast.
Yeah.
You are unconsciously walking past what has happened.
It's a profound intervention. She's helping him realize that sitting still on the couch is actually the most dangerous thing he could do, emotionally speaking.
Because if he sits still, the noise of the chores stops. And if the noise of the chores stops, he has to sit with the emotional residue of the entire week.
He has to feel the sting of the neighbor's joke. He has to feel the profound disrespect of the cut cable. He has to feel the visceral bodily memory of the trauma shared in Tuesday's group.
Moving a shoebox is infinitely easier than feeling that accumulated pain.
So she assigns him what I think is the hardest homework assignment imaginable. She gives him a task of active mentalizing.
She says, tonight, when you sit down for your Netflix evening, the next time you get the urge to pause the TV and go do a chore, don't do it. Stop the tape. Sit there. Look at what you were feeling in your body in that exact millisecond before you stand up.
She is asking him to study the architecture of his own avoidance.
Notice how empowering this is. She isn't diagnosing him from on high. She's recruiting him as a co-investigator into his own mind.
She is asking him to find the very edge of his window of tolerance, that exact moment when the anxiety spikes and demands he move, and just observe it. Not change it, not judge it, just look at it.
This builds the capacity to mentalize in real time.
And his response is fantastic. He doesn't get defensive. He says, "That's a good tip. I am curious about it myself because I don't get happy from this either."
He recognizes that his primary coping mechanism, frantic productivity, is bankrupt. It's no longer serving him.
And having successfully mapped out this entire week's behavioral architecture, the session pivots back to the immediate looming reality, the very reason this one-on-one bridge session exists. Tomorrow morning is Friday.
The next group session is hours away.
And this is where the rubber meets the road in MBT. They have spent the hour dissecting his internal landscape, and now they have to figure out how he is going to carry that fragile, newly formed awareness back into the highly combustible, live environment of the group.
And he is visibly anxious about it. He expresses real, tangible hesitation about walking back into that room.
He tells the therapist that he is deeply worried about the specific mix of personalities in the group space. He points out that some members require him to adopt a completely different perspective than his own, which takes immense energy.
And others are so similar to him that their neuroses violently clash with his. What he is articulating here is a deep fear that his window of tolerance, while slightly widened by this one-on-one session, is still far too fragile to handle the dynamic friction of the group.
He is terrified that the moment the emotional temperature in the room rises, he will instantly regress into his ultimate, deeply ingrained defense mechanism.
Which is becoming too gentle. He explicitly states his fear. He is afraid that if someone else in the group is struggling, he will immediately abandon his own needs, shrink himself down, and accommodate them.
He knows that if the tension rises, he will just bite his tongue exactly like he did with the neighbor, exactly like he did with the contractor. He will prioritize the group's comfort over his own desperate need to process his trauma.
He says it plainly. I take much more account of the other person than I take account of myself.
And this brings us to what might be the most beautiful, profound moment of vulnerability in the entire transcript. This is the ultimate goal of MBT realized in real time.
He has successfully mentalized his own avoidance pattern. He knows exactly how he's going to self-sabotage before he even walks into the room.
But instead of hiding that fact or just quietly judging himself for it, he actively asks for help.
He recruits a therapist.
He looks at her and says, "If I don't bring anything up tomorrow, remind me. I think I push it too far ahead of me. Remind me to bring this up because I suffer from it."
He is explicitly asking her to be his anchor when the turbulent waters of the group try to pull him under.
Do not underestimate the courage this requires. He is demonstrating immense epistemic trust in the therapist.
He is acknowledging his own limitations. He is admitting that the magnetic pull of his old defense mechanisms, the urge to people-pleasers, to withdraw, to minimize his own pain so others can take up space, is simply too strong for him to fight alone right now.
By inviting the therapist to hold him accountable, he is essentially locking the escape hatch.
In a group therapy setting, it is incredibly easy to hide behind the louder, more explosive traumas of other people. By asking her to call him out, he is ensuring that he cannot hide.
He is demanding that he be seen, even if he has to force the therapist to drag him into the spotlight against his own reflexes.
It is a stunning conclusion to the hour. And the therapist doesn't overcomplicate it. She meets his vulnerability with solid, reliable confirmation. She says simply, "Okay, I'm going to do that."
The contract is established, the anchor is set. He walks out of that room still physically tired, still dealing with a dented car, a severed cable, a chaotic garden, and a disconnected evening with his wife.
But fundamentally, profoundly, he is less alone in his internal experience.
Because he is no longer just a passive victim absorbing the world's impact, he has become a student of his own reactions. He understands the mechanics of his own mind just a little bit better.
Which means when Friday morning comes, he has a fighting chance of actually staying in the room.
Which brings the lens directly back to you, listening to this right now. I want to challenge you to look at your own architecture. We all have our versions of the garden, the broken cable, the dripping sprinkler.
We all have moments where we swallow our irritation to keep the peace, only to feel it rot into resentment.
But more importantly, I want you to think about your own shoebox moments.
Yes, those moments of frantic, meaningless, unavoidable productivity.
When you find yourself at 11:00 p.m., bone-tired but suddenly gripped by the overwhelming electric urge to reorganize a drawer, scrub the baseboards, check your email one last time, or fix a minor issue in the house, what deeper feeling are you actually trying to outrun?
Are you like the participant, exhausted from a week of biting your tongue?
Are you hoping your actions, your visible, undeniable effort, will finally force the people around you to truly finally see you? Because the absolute truth is, the shoebox does not matter. The baseboards do not matter. The emails do not matter.
What matters is the quiet, terrifying, agonizing millisecond right before you stand up to clean them.
What happens if next time you just stop the tape? What happens if you just sit there?
That is the essence of mentalizing. Having the courage to sit in the muddy waters of your own mind without immediately trying to drain the swamp.
Thank you for listening to this group session episode of the MBT podcast. Don't forget to follow us to stay updated on new episodes where we continue to explore what it means to mentalize within yourself, in relationships, and within the group.